Genesis is more than a collection of stories. It's the foundation of the entire Bible. It introduces us to God's character, His plan for humanity, and His promises to Abraham's descendants. From creation to the fall, from Noah's Ark to the Tower of Babel, and from Abraham to Joseph, Genesis shows us the beginnings of God's redemptive plan, and it's a story of brokenness, but also of hope. Every story in Genesis points forward to Jesus, the ultimate fulfillment of God's promises. It's a reminder that God's plans are bigger than we can imagine, and His faithfulness endures through generations. Let's start at the very beginning, because let's face it, that's where all the best questions begin. What was there before there was anything? Nothing. No stars, no planets, no existential dread, just nothing. And then, out of nowhere, boom. Lights, stars, planets, and eventually humans. But don't get too excited. It doesn't take long for things to go hilariously, catastrophically wrong. Welcome to Genesis. So God creates the universe in 6 days. Let's break this down. Day 1, light. Day 2, sky. Day 3, land and plants. By day 6, God's basically showing off. He's creating whales, elephants, and of course humans. And here's the kicker. He says it's all very good. Now, I don't know about you, but if I were creating the universe, I'd probably take a coffee break after day 3. But not God. He's on a roll. And then on day 7, he finally rests, because even the creator of the universe needs a day off. But here's the real question. What was God doing before day 1? Cosmic yoga? Infinite Sudoku? We don't know. But what we do know is this. The stage is set. The universe is here. And humanity is about to make its grand entrance. Spoiler alert. It's a mixed bag. Enter Adam and Eve. They're living in the Garden of Eden, which is basically paradise. No rent, no traffic, no Wi-Fi outages, just perfect weather, delicious fruit, and all the animals you could ever want to name. But there's one rule, just one. Don't eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's it. Seems easy enough, right? Wrong. Because along comes the serpent, smooth talking, persuasive, and probably rocking some serious snake charisma. He convinces Eve to eat the fruit, and Eve, being a team player, shares it with Adam. Now, I don't blame them. I mean, who doesn't love a good apple? But here's the thing. They broke the one rule, and suddenly they realize they're naked. Cue the world's first awkward moment. So God shows up for his daily walk in the garden, and Adam and Eve are hiding. God's like, "Where are you?" And Adam's like, "Just hanging out behind this bush, no reason." God knows what's up, of course. He's God. And when he asks Adam what happened, Adam does what any of us would do. He blames Eve. "The woman you gave me, she made me do it." Smooth move, Adam. Eve, not to be outdone, blames the serpent. And the serpent, well, he doesn't get a say. God curses him to crawl on his belly forever. Don't mess with the Almighty. And just like that, paradise is lost. Adam and Eve are kicked out of the garden, and life gets a whole lot harder. But here's the thing. Even in this mess, there's hope, because God promises that one day someone will come to fix everything. So what's the takeaway? Well, for starters, don't eat the forbidden fruit. But more importantly, even when we mess up, and we will, there's always a way forward. And that's just the beginning of the story. After Adam and Eve get kicked out of the garden, things get complicated. Enter Cain and Abel, their 2 sons. Cain's a farmer, Abel's a shepherd, and they both decide to bring offerings to God. Now here's the thing. Abel brings his best lamb, and Cain brings some vegetables. And God likes Abel's offering more. Ouch. Cain's not happy about this. I mean, who would be? But instead of asking for feedback, or maybe trying a new recipe, Cain does something drastic. He invites Abel out to the field, and let's just say it doesn't end well for Abel. God shows up and asks Cain, "Where's your brother?" And Cain, trying to play it cool, says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Spoiler, yes. Cain, yes you are. God punishes Cain by making him a wanderer, but he also puts a mark on him so no one kills him. It's a weird mix of justice and mercy, and it sets the stage for humanity's ongoing struggle with jealousy, anger, and, well, sibling rivalry. Fast forward a few generations, and things have gone from bad to worse. The world is full of violence and corruption, and God decides to hit the reset button. Enter Noah. Now, Noah's a good guy. He's faithful, he's obedient, and he's probably really good at building things, because God tells him to build an ark, a massive boat, and fill it with animals. Imagine trying to explain that to your neighbors. Hey, I'm building a giant boat because it's going to rain. A lot. They probably thought Noah was crazy, but guess what? It starts raining. And it doesn't stop for 40 days. The ark becomes a floating zoo, and Noah, his family, and all the animals riding out the storm. When the waters recede, God makes a covenant with Noah, promising never to flood the earth again. And he gives us the rainbow as a reminder. So what's the takeaway? Well, for starters, don't ignore the guy building a massive boat in the desert. But more importantly, even in the midst of judgment, there's always a plan for redemption. After the flood, humanity gets a fresh start, but it doesn't take long for things to go off the rails again. This time, everyone decides to build a tower that reaches the heavens. Now, on the surface, this seems like a cool idea. Teamwork, innovation, but here's the problem. They're doing it to make a name for themselves, not to honor God. So God comes down, takes one look at the tower, and says, "Nope." He confuses their language, and suddenly no one can understand each other. The project falls apart, and everyone scatters across the earth. It's a classic case of pride coming before the fall, but it's also a reminder that our plans, no matter how grand, are nothing without humility and a higher purpose. And just like that, we're set up for the next chapter in Genesis, the story of Abraham. After the Tower of Babel, God decides to start fresh again. This time, he chooses a man named Abram, later known as Abraham. God makes a big promise. "I'll make you the father of many nations." Now here's the catch. Abraham is 75, and his wife is 65, and they don't have any kids. Sarah's like, "Are you serious?" But God doesn't do things halfway. Fast forward a few years, and Sarah still hasn't had a baby. So she suggests Abraham have a child with her servant, Hagar. Enter Ishmael. But God says, nope, that's not the plan. Finally, when Abraham is 100 and Sarah 90, God fulfills his promise. Sarah gives birth to Isaac, and yes, she laughs, because who wouldn't? Moral of the story, God's timing is always perfect, even when it seems impossible. Isaac grows up and marries Rebekah. They have twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau's the older one, a rugged hunter, while Jacob's more of a homebody. One day, Esau comes home starving and trades his birthright, his inheritance as the firstborn, for a bowl of Jacob's stew. not his finest moment. Later, with the help from Rebekah, Jacob tricks Isaac into giving him the blessing meant for Esau. Esau's not happy about this at all. It's a classic case of sibling rivalry, deception, and a reminder that actions have consequences. Jacob flees to his uncle Laban's house to escape Esau's wrath. Along the way, he has a dream of a ladder reaching to heaven. God reaffirms the promise he made to Abraham. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. At Laban's, Jacob falls in love with Rachel and agrees to work 7 years to marry her. But on the wedding night, Laban tricks him into marrying Leah, Rachel's older sister. Jacob's like, not cool, Laban. He works another 7 years for Rachel, and eventually he becomes the father of 12 sons. These sons will become the 12 tribes of Israel. It's a story of perseverance, family drama, and God's faithfulness, even when life gets a little messy. Now let's talk about Joseph. He's Jacob's favorite son, and his brothers are not thrilled about it. They sell him into slavery, and Joseph ends up in Egypt. But here's the twist. Joseph rises to power in Egypt because of his ability to interpret dreams. He saves the nation from famine, and eventually his brothers come begging for help. It's a story of betrayal, forgiveness, and God's bigger plan. Joseph's story is one of the most dramatic in the Bible. Sold into slavery by his brothers, he ends up in Egypt, where he's falsely accused and thrown into prison. But Joseph has a gift. He can interpret dreams. When Pharaoh has a troubling dream about 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows, Joseph is called in. He explains that the dream means 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Pharaoh is so impressed that he puts Joseph in charge of preparing Egypt for the famine. Joseph rises to power, second only to Pharaoh himself. It's a story of resilience, faith, and God's bigger plan, even when life seems unfair. Back in Canaan, Joseph's brothers are struggling because of the famine. They travel to Egypt to buy grain, not realizing they're dealing with Joseph. Joseph recognizes them, but doesn't reveal his identity. He tests them by accusing them of being spies and demanding they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to Egypt. When they return with Benjamin, Joseph finally reveals who he is. His brothers are terrified, but Joseph forgives them, saying, "You meant evil to me, but God meant it for good." It's a powerful moment of reconciliation and a reminder that God can turn even the worst situations into something good. Joseph brings his entire family to Egypt, where they settle in the land of Goshen. Before he dies, Joseph makes his brothers promise to take his bones back to Canaan when they eventually leave Egypt. Genesis ends on a hopeful note, with the promise of God's faithfulness to Abraham's descendants. But it also sets the stage for the next chapter in the Bible, Exodus. It's a reminder that God's plans are bigger than we can imagine, and his promises endure through generations. As we close the book of Genesis, we're left with a sense of awe and anticipation. God's promises are still unfolding, and his faithfulness is as real today as it was thousands of years ago. Whether you're exploring the Bible for the first time or revisiting these stories, Genesis invites us to trust in God's bigger plan, even when life doesn't make sense. So what's your story? How does Genesis speak to you? Let's keep exploring, learning, and growing together. Thanks for joining me on this journey through Genesis.